with your family and friends crying as you're let out of the courtroom to serve the rest of your life in prison.
Today, I'm gonna be brutally honest. I'm not saying I regret.
Brought into the 111th precinct to be charged in this major gang conspiracy case.
Have you ever thought about what goes through the mind of a notorious gang leader when they're sentenced to life in prison? Today, we delve into the stark realities and unforeseen reactions of 7 gang leaders who faced the ultimate punishment for their heinous crimes. Join us as we explore the profound impact of life imprisonment on some of the most feared gang leaders. Number 1. The Trinitarios. In the Bronx, New York, a tragedy unfolded with the brutal murder of 15-year-old Lisandro Guzman Feliz, often remembered simply as Junior. His life was violently taken by members of the Trinitarios, a notorious street gang with a fearsome reputation. The authorities swiftly acted, and soon 8 members of the Trinitarios gang were apprehended and charged for their involvement in this atrocious crime. The case against them was strong, leading to the conviction of 5 members for first-degree murder. These individuals were handed down the most severe sentence possible: life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. During the trial, the courtroom atmosphere was charged with emotions. However, what stood out was the defendants' reactions. Despite the gravity of their actions and the loss they had caused, some showed little to no remorse. Their demeanor was chilling. A few were even seen smiling and laughing, a stark contrast to the seriousness of their crimes. The trial was a focal point for many, with witnesses and the judge playing key roles. The judge's words were stern, emphasizing the gravity of the crime and the impact on Junior's family and the wider community. One of the most heart-wrenching moments was the statement from Junior's mother, who poignantly highlighted the lost potential of her son. Number 2. Sandra Avila Beltron. Sandra Avila Beltron, notoriously known as the Queen of the Pacific, stands out as a pivotal figure in the Mexican drug trade. Her deep-rooted connections to some of Mexico's most infamous cartel leaders, such as Rafael Caro Quintero and the Beltran Leyva brothers, have marked her as a significant player in the world of organized crime. Notably, she is the niece of Miguel Angel Felix Gallardo, a key architect of the modern Mexican drug trafficking system. Sandra's involvement in drug trafficking, particularly in the cocaine trade, dates back to the 1970s. Her ties to the cartel world were not just professional, but also personal, as she was linked to several drug barons through marriage and relationships. Her reign in the drug world, however, faced a significant setback when authorities traced a substantial cocaine shipment back to her. This discovery led to her arrest, a moment that marked a turning point in her life. Sandra's extradition to the United States in 2012 to face charges was a significant event. Her courtroom appearances were closely watched, with many expecting a reaction that matched her notorious reputation. However, the trial was marked by a blend of anticipation and surprise. Throughout the trial, witnesses took the stand, each adding layers to the complex story of her criminal endeavors. The judge's statements were firm, reflecting the severity of the charges against her. Sandra's reactions in court were of particular interest to the public and media, given her high-profile status in the drug trafficking world. Number 3. George Guweld Thomas. In the notorious underworld of South Africa's gang landscape, George Guweld Thomas, a key figure in the 28's gang, emerged as a symbol of ruthless criminality. His initiation into this feared gang as a teenager marked the beginning of a life steeped in violence and illegal activities. Over the years, Thomas became deeply involved in a series of violent crimes, including murder and drug trafficking, which terrorized communities and challenged law enforcement. The depth of his criminal involvement was so profound that even during his time in prison, Thomas continued to orchestrate criminal activities, demonstrating his unyielding influence and power within the gang. This aspect of his criminal life was particularly alarming, as it highlighted the reach and control he wielded from behind bars. Thomas's eventual capture and arrest were significant in the fight against gang violence in South Africa. As the leader of one of the most feared gangs in South Africa, his position in the criminal hierarchy was undisputed. During his trial, Thomas faced charges for multiple murders and was ultimately sentenced to 7 life terms, a testament to the severity of his crimes. What was particularly striking about Thomas during the trial was his demeanor in the courtroom. Despite facing serious charges, he remained unrepentant, often seen smiling throughout the proceedings. This shocking reaction was a stark contrast to the gravity of his crimes and the pain inflicted on numerous families. The judge's statements were firm and reflected the heinous nature of Thomas's actions. His nonchalant demeanor in court was a disturbing sight for many, especially the victims' families, who had suffered greatly due to his actions. Number 4. Antonio Nathaniel Davenport Jr. and Derek Lamont Dixon Jr. In Durham, North Carolina, the case of Antonio Nathaniel Davenport Jr., known as Lil Tony, and Derek Lamont Dixon Jr., aka Smack, stands as a grim testament to the devastating impact of gang violence. As members of the notorious 8-Tray gangster Crips, their crimes extended far beyond the typical street thug activities, involving shootings, drug trafficking, and bank fraud. Davenport also dabbled in rap music with the group 83 Babies, which glorified the gang lifestyle. Their descent into deeper criminality was marked by a violent incident at a mall, which was the catalyst for a tragic and misguided retaliation. Believing they had located a car belonging to their attackers, they opened fire, tragically killing 9-year-old Zion Person and wounding his cousin. The evidence against Davenport was overwhelming. He was under surveillance through a court-ordered ankle monitor, which placed him at the scene of the crime. Surveillance footage and a linked handgun further corroborated his involvement. In court, Davenport faced the consequences of his actions, charged with first-degree murder among other offenses. The trial revealed the extent of their gang activities and the cold-blooded nature of the crime. Dixon pleaded guilty to conspiracy charges, while Davenport was found guilty of murder and sentenced to life imprisonment. The courtroom reaction was one of disbelief and horror, especially given the young age of their victim. The lack of remorse shown by both Davenport and Dixon was chilling, leaving a lasting impact on all those present. Number 5. Judith Moran. Judith Moran, a name closely tied to the infamous Moran family known for their deep involvement in the Melbourne gangland killings, represents a dark chapter in Australian criminal history. Her life, entangled in crime and tragedy, saw her family members, including her husbands and sons, deeply immersed in the underworld, ultimately meeting violent ends. Her own descent into the criminal world culminated in her arrest for involvement in the murder of her brother-in-law, Desmond Moran. Judith Moran's role in the gang was not just familial. She was an active participant in the gang's operations. In court, Moran's trial was a focal point of public attention. The proceedings shed light on the violent and often hidden world of organized crime in Melbourne. Witnesses took the stand, their testimonies painting a vivid picture of the inner workings of the Moran family and their criminal dealings. The judge's statements during the trial were stern, reflecting the seriousness of Moran's crimes. She was found guilty and sentenced to a significant 26 years in prison, a decision that underscored the severity of her actions. Number 6. Abal Galos. Abal Galos, entangled in a heinous crime that shook the community, faced the justice system with a heavy burden of guilt. He was convicted for the murder of Isabella Thallas Duran. Gallegos was sentenced to life in prison, plus an additional 163 years, a sentence that underscored the severity and premeditated nature of his actions. Isabella Thallas Duran became a target for Gallegos and his associates due to her action of identifying a gang member. This decision led to a tragic turn of events, culminating in her kidnapping and murder. The specifics of the crime painted a chilling picture of the dangers posed by gang-related activities and the lengths to which individuals like Gallegos would go to protect their criminal interests. In court, the reaction to Gallegos' sentencing was a mix of relief and horror. The details of the crime, as laid out during the trial, elicited strong reactions from those present. Witnesses recounted the events leading up to Duran's murder, each testimony adding to the weight of evidence against Gallegos. The judge, in delivering the sentence, expressed clear disgust at the premeditated nature of Gallegos' crime. His actions not only ended a life, but also left lasting scars on the community. Number 7. The Carpio Brothers. The case of the Carpio brothers, Anthony and Michael, is a stark reminder of how quickly violence can escalate with tragic consequences. These brothers were involved in the fatal stabbing of Kevin Orellana, a devastating incident that occurred on the grounds of Cleveland High School. Their journey to the courtroom began with an altercation at the school, which shockingly spiraled into murder. This act not only ended a young life, but also forever altered the lives of the Carpio brothers and their victim's family. The Carpio brothers were arrested following this incident, marking a sad resolution to a dispute that went too far. Their involvement with a gang played a crucial role in the escalation of the altercation, illustrating the dangerous influence such affiliations can have on young individuals. In the courtroom, the reaction of the Carpio brothers was one of remorse. Despite their expressions of regret, the severity of their actions warranted a strict sentence. Both brothers received 15 to 16 years to life, a decision reflecting the seriousness of their crime. During the trial, witnesses recounted the events leading up to and following the fatal stabbing, painting a vivid picture of that fateful day. The judge's remarks during sentencing highlighted the tragic waste of life and the irreversible impact of such senseless violence.